Hello. Um, I wanted to talk to you about the release that we just made for Tides of Revival. So that is what's starting up right now. So you can see it's called Tides of Revival Hill 2 March of the Ants, which is a mouthful. But you know, you gotta name your things. Some things. Right. So in this release, it's a fairly straightforward sort of wave shooter, stage shooter, whatever you want to call it, where you have a bow that you can charge, and there are ants spawning, and yeah, you basically just need to survive for as long as possible. And there are 3 different kinds of ants, like the small ones, and then there are slightly big ones, and there's a huge boss ant. And yeah, I think this is basically the second release of the game, and the first one was just at the beginning of this year. And if you saw it then, you can go back on YouTube and look. It's called there's a video called Death from Darkness. And you know, the difference is quite staggering. So you might wonder, well, what have we've been doing really? And one of the bigger things that we have been doing is that there is now a we. It's not just I. We're a team now of 4 people. The programming is done by me and Giuseppe, and the art is done by Julia, or some of the art at least. Some of the art is, you know, free assets that we've, you know, used. And then there's Alexander, who's my friend, and he's helping a lot with like talking about game design and lore and world building and that sort of thing. So okay, so maybe we can first talk about what Tides of Revival is, because maybe if you're new, maybe you don't know that. So I tried to summarize it here on the GitHub, and it's a you know, a single-player RPG set in a huge, massive fantasy world played from, you know, it's an FPS basically. I like to say that the genre is that it's a massive insim. And one of the big features is that it uses an offline pre-baked world, so everyone who plays the game, you know, you download it just as if you would download, you know, Skyrim or something. So everyone gets to play the same world, and you can talk about, you know, have discussion about, you know, the world and what you find in it and how you progress through the game, and sort of you know, that's the idea, that you can learn from it, and also that we can make it, you know, much more complicated or complex and interconnected compared to if you play a game like, you know, Minecraft, where they have to, like, you know, spawn more and more of the world as you move around through it. By generating the whole world at once, we can do more interesting stuff. And we want to focus on immersion, which is, you know, maybe a platitude, but basically try to keep the player from thinking, you know, why is this the way it is? Oh, right, it's because I'm playing a game, right? This is not something that would reasonably happen, given the rules that I know of the world and so on. But I know that it has to happen because this is a game, and in games things like this happen. And we want to keep that to a minimum, because personally, that kind of thing draws me out of the game, and for an RPG, I want to be inside the game as much as I can, basically. And we want to have it very dynamic, so, you know, everything from dialogue to having a real effect on the game and the game world. So there's the release then. Hills, as you saw in the game, is what we're calling our releases, and the reason for why we call them hills. If you don't already know, you can watch this little video. It's just 11 minutes, and the basic idea is that let's see, that by making the game not just in terms of like, you know, starting from scratch and seeing some sort of destination that's like 20 years away, and we just move towards that destination at like some sort of, you know, like a linear vector towards that direction. We move, you know, we have that destination in mind, and then we set up like, okay, so the following release should be something that takes us roughly in that direction, and then we make more or less full game with that constraint, and then at the end of that release we can evaluate it. We can, you know, really think about, okay, as a game, what worked, what didn't work, what was nice, and so on. It also allows us to, from a sort of a production point of view, it allows us to be to handle tech depth in a good way, I think. Like it's for a new system, we can hack it together for release, and then we can see, oh, this was actually a really nice system, or the result of the system was really nice, so let's keep it, but, you know, maybe we should rewrite it to be really nice now that we know what we want, right? So every time we complete the release, we can go back and fix some of the tech debt before we move on, which generally you don't really have time to do. This concept of hills is it seems to work really well. We haven't done it that much yet, but it really seems to work well. I'm not super sure it would work if you're like, you know, under economical constraints or under time constraints, but we aren't really under that right now. So this feels like a really good way to work. And it's also like really, you know, it's fun to actually put out a release of like, here's a game that you can play that feels like a reasonably completed game. Not to say that Hill 2 is a perfect completed game, like there are sounds missing and all manner of things, but at some point it becomes a matter of what can we learn from this for the next releases, and maybe like tweaking small details and adding sounds and so on. That's nice, but maybe it doesn't help us that much think about the future. Probably depends a lot on who you would have on the team and so on, but right now I think we felt like we had to like, okay, we're just gonna make this release because we've polished it a bit and it's quite nice, it's quite fun to play and shoot these ants, and that's good enough. Let's just wrap it up. So you can now play this release over on itch.io. You can download it here if you're on Mac. If you're on Windows, it's only on Windows right now, and with some luck, that's something that we can fix for next release, but no promises, because we are both sort of, us programmers are both Windows developers. But if someone wants to help us out and make it, you know, possible to build for Mac, hey, we appreciate, you know, any assistance like that. So what are the hills, and what was this release? So the previous one was, as I said, Death from Darkness, and it was released in January this year, and now we released March of the Ants in November. And the core idea that I have about these releases is that they should, you know, improve the game, you know, require new systems, new gameplay, you know, in some way. You know, it doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be like, okay, for the final game we're gonna need all of these things, so the release also will need to have all of these things, but just in like a small, you know, smaller way. No, it can completely skip some things, but it does need to build forward, sort of, and possibly a little bit sideways. So the next hill that we're gonna make, these dates, by the way, are of course extremely, you know, can be extremely wrong, will be extremely wrong, I'm sure. But it's nice to have some sort of idea of what when things might happen. So this a fort wasn't built in a day. It's gonna be similar in a lot of ways, I think. You're still gonna need to probably shoot ants, or maybe we'll switch enemy, but some kind of enemy, and we'll probably just keep the bow combat because it's quite, we have it and it's actually quite nice. We can improve it a little bit maybe, but actually it's it's in a decent state, so maybe we don't have to improve it that much. And what we want to do that's new for this release in terms of gameplay is a new or a real AI architecture, I would say, because we want to show two things. One is like you have NPCs that move around and do things, so they're going to be building a fort, and in a lot of games you might see like, okay, you have an NPC and they're like, they take a stone and then they walk 10 meters and they put it down and then boom, there's a wall there, and then they do that 100 times maybe, and then you have a wall or like a whole fort, and that took 5 minutes to build, right? But one of the sort of core ideas of Tides is that it should be all of these like massive world and believable, and that also extends to sort of the time dimension. So building a fort shouldn't take 5 minutes or 15 minutes, it should take months of game time. And so this hill is going to be that's one of the steps that this hill will take for us, is like, okay, how do we do that in our game? Like, hey, do we need day-night cycles? Of course, we need a way to like fast forward time. We need a way to I don't know. I'm sure we'll find a lot of things that we need to do in order to support this. But I think it will be worth it, and I think it will be extremely nice to like see your fort build itself over days and days and days, and see a nice sort of cinematic camera over the fort while there aren't any enemies attacking and so on. So and we've actually taken the time to try and write down exactly what we need to do, and we might do more than this, but this is, I think, like the minimum sort of what we want to do. So we need a proper AI system, AI architecture. We need day-night cycle. We want to improve the Flex Explorer. That's like the system that we use for building entities in the game. We want to have like debug UIs in the game. That's this as well, because the game is growing to a size now where it's becoming really, really useful for us to be able to have like debug settings and stuff. Same with like Jolt. We have Jolt, but we really need to get some debug visualization up, because now we're gonna have like the player is gonna be able to walk on walls, and the ants or enemies are also gonna need to walk on walls and so on. And if that's not working, we need to be able to show that. And similarly, this is also something that we now need for this release. Buildings along splines, so that we can build this fort in a way that looks nice, right? Pathfinding, and we're going to use Recast and Detour for that. We're going to rewrite the render architecture significantly using the Forge. Maybe this is almost the same thing here, but yeah, we're gonna base the renderer on the Forge, which is gonna give us various advantages for the future. And maybe already, if you ask Giuseppe, I think he's really, really happy about this. And now, since we really want to have this sort of day-night cycle, and we want to have more lights and so on, I think we really need shadows, at least from the sun, to make for some nice views, right? Just visually, it's gonna look very flat if we don't have shadows, but it's enough if it's just the sun for now. Yeah, same. We're gonna improve the atmosphere model, and that's also for the day-night cycle and for lighting in general. Terrain stitching, I don't know if you saw that now. You probably didn't because we've hidden it a bit, but the sort of there are sort of stitches in the terrain, or there aren't, I should say, where the terrain sort of doesn't align with itself. So that's something that we want to fix. And so this is the plan for A Fort Wasn't Built in a Day, and we have a little bit of a larger planning document here, and this is kind of what it looks like. So this is the first hill that we made, and for this hill it was basically just me, and this is a little bit about what the game was. This is about which tech we managed to do for that game, or that release, the audio that we had, and art. And this is also like something that is not directly affecting the game, but it kind of also is. Just trying to list the sort of non-game things that we did that was related to it in some way. So yeah, it was me in the organization, but yeah. And I put out dev videos from time to time. I still continue doing that. I think it's a lot of fun. Some dev posts on Twitter. A yearly video, I want to do that as well at the end of this year. I wrote some posts on co-host. I haven't done that this year, I think. Maybe I have like one or two. And then we've been, I and a guy named Jonas, we've been organizing Stockholm SIG, and of course Tides is written in SIG. So that's a small tangentially related thing. This is the second hill, and you can see this is the same list basically. Well, actually, yeah. So no, this is like what we managed to do from a tech perspective for this release. So we have Wise-based audio, a proper sort of train streaming system, not just train but almost everything in the game world, which is nice. Better world generation, timelines. This is like a sort of there's a lot of nice things here that we started working on, and honestly we got much further than I would have thought. At the beginning of the year I didn't know that Giuseppe was joining, so we have gotten way further than I had ever thought I would get by this time, which is nice. So yeah, you can see here we are now 4 people, and we have a Discord. We didn't have that. We have hills as a concept for our releases. The game is up on itch. We do our design on Obsidian, which is sort of like a markdown based, sort of locally hosted design writing tool, which works quite well for us. I started the Open World Game Dev newsletter, and the Discord, which it's really nice because I used to collect a bunch of these resources on my own in a really weird way, and now I get to do it in a more formalized way, and I still need to do it, so why not just do it as newsletter to put out for people. We decided on the name. Previously it was called Elvengroin Legacy, but now it's called Tides of Revival, which is a more proper name. I did a vision video, or actually 2, I think, but the biggest one. So this is the art vision, which is 50 minutes, and then there's a design high-level vision, which is like 2.5 hours. And this took a lot of time to prepare and set up, but it turned out quite well, I think. A lot of people, a surprising amount of people have actually told me that they've watched the whole video and liked it. Both of those things together is quite amazing, I think. I would have expected some be like, well, yeah, I watched a bit and it seemed interesting, you know. But yeah, just having, I don't know, 5 people maybe say like, yeah, I watched the whole video and, you know, go for it. This is awesome, you know. That's pretty cool. So yeah. Let's see, where were we on the DICE document? Yeah. So for Hill 3, this is what I talked about just now. We'll have like some towers and stuff. For the NPCs, I think we'll just have like placeholder, you know, cylinders or something, because we don't have animation, and I don't think we want to add animation for this release. It's too big of a thing. I don't think much will happen with the organization next year, although we are, you know, we're kind of looking for more people to join. So yeah, that's the thing. And there's a little bit about that over here in the join the development. Yeah, and I guess I can talk about the future release as well, because that could be interesting to know what we're thinking. So basically, if this is just still being in roughly one place and predicting it, Hill 4 is going to be where we start to move out into the world. So we're going to have a larger world, not a huge world still, but pretty big. And there are going to be multiple villages, and at the start, they're not going to be like, you know, there's not going to be any roads. But as you sort of move around in the world and maybe protect caravans from attacks, it's going to get safer, and then they're going to start building roads. And that's going to be like one of the first really dynamic big world changes that you'll see. So that's going to be interesting as well. And then Hill 5, it's basically, it's kind of, it's not very well defined, but it's really going to be like the first release where it feels like this is a very, very small subset of the final game, sort of. I think we'll try to have dialogue in the game where you can talk to villagers and so on. And various sort of, also try to write down the minimum as requirements for the tech that we'll need in order to do this release and this release. So for example, here we're going to have caravans moving at night, and then we want to have like, okay, at that point you really won't have shadows from dynamic lights, point lights and so on. Otherwise it's going to look kind of weird, and you're going to have like maybe a campfire and it spreads out the light or something like that. So this will require you to not just follow the road, but maybe go out into the wilderness and kill monsters or bandit camps and so on. We have a Trello, and we have an itch page, as I showed you. This is the newsletter. I think I've covered these. The takeaways from this release. I think one for me is that the bow gameplay turned out quite well, and I've sort of been debating a bit with myself if I want to have the game be sort of player skill based or character skill based. Like if I shoot a bow at an enemy, do I hit it even if my character's bow skill is really low, or do I hit it but I don't do much damage, or is it just like player skill? Like if I hold my, if I charge my bow and shoot it and I hit in the head because I aim so well, that's the most important thing. And I think previously I was maybe leaning more towards like probably having like a VATS style Fallout model where it's more character based, but now maybe I'm leaning more towards having a little bit more towards having player skill. But yeah, well, we'll see. Not decided yet, but that was quite interesting. More takeaways. I don't know. I just think it really feels like we're on the right track with things. The game looks so much better, and we have plans to like. I think the next hill is gonna look amazing. So yeah, I'm happy about that. I think there's you might think that I'm aiming sort of too high with the graphical render, like the visual scope of the game. But I don't think so. I think we're aiming just where we should, which is quite high. And yeah, I've talked about how I plan these and the upcoming hills as well. And the next one I've talked about. And I can mention a little bit more about the tech depth. I would actually like to make like a full video on tech depth, because if you see any conversations about it online on like Twitter or whatever, tech depth is bad. That's like there's nothing good about tech depth. That's the consensus on the interwebs, and I disagree. I think tech depth is actually good, so, which is maybe contrarian, but I think it makes sense if you just think about it, and I think probably more people will agree with me if I can try and explain my thoughts on that. But yeah, we definitely reduced some of the tech depth at the start of this hill. We used to have a truly awful terrain system that I wrote last year, and it was just not good at all. And I knew that was actually one of the sort of, I'm going to write an awful tech terrain system, because I want to, once I have that done, I can start to work on other things, and then I know that I can come back later and improve it, with more knowledge and so on. And we actually did that. So now we have this WorldPad patch manager here, which loads terrain. It also, has, it's sort of generic enough that it's there's different it's not the same logic that loads like visual terrain compared to like physics for the terrain, and the like trees in the game are also loaded by the system, but in a again with using different logic, but using the WordPad manager. So it's quite powerful. There's still like improvements to make on it, like threading and so on, that we can definitely, we can make it faster and better. But for now, like for this release, it's been a huge benefit. And also, like the whole terrain is now rewritten by Giuseppe to be a terrain quad, quad based system, quad tree based system. The whole rendering has gone through many changes. So yeah, that's one thing that we've reduced, and something that we've added. I think the interact system is probably the best example of that, where we didn't have an interact system, and I sort of know what I want from an interact system, but I also knew that for this hill, we only, like, the only thing you can interact with is the bow. So basically all of the bow logic is just basically hard-coded in here, and it has some, like, yeah, this is in dire need of refactoring, because we have like this if statement here that's pretty long, and this if statement is identical to this one. It's just that in this one, entity 2 is the flipped version of entity 1, and vice versa compared to up here. So there's entity 2 and entity 1, which is like the projectile and the thing that the projectile hits. So there's like this can be improved in a lot of ways, and I know like roughly where I want to take that. I also think that we probably don't need to fix that for Hill 3, because I don't think that we will, like, interaction wise, I don't think we'll have more than the bow for Hill 3. So maybe we can just keep this and focus on other things, and that's totally fine. We can have some shit code, that's all, as long as it works, it doesn't really matter. And we can work on other things instead and then come back to it. Probably in Hill 4, it's going to be a good time to come back to this. So yeah, some ups and some downs. And yeah, I don't know that there's that much more I want to add. I think there was something, but I kind of forgot. I'm not sure if it was super important. Probably not. So yeah, this was the March of the Ants release, and I really hope to be here in next year sometime to talk about how this release went. And I hope you're still with me then. Alright, thanks a lot. Bye bye.